I'll tell you a story that still plays in my head like a movie, and it all started on a flight I wasn't even supposed to be on. The cabin had that low humming sound you only notice when you let your mind drift, and the soft golden lights made everything look calmer than it really was. I'd settled into a seat up front, the kind of seat you don't talk about too much because people assume you're bragging. Truth is, I've traveled enough that the shine of first class doesn't hit me anymore. I just like the quiet. At least I thought I did. That quiet didn't last more than a few minutes. Out of nowhere, this woman swept into the aisle like she owned the plane. She had the hair piled up high, the red blouse that was trying too hard, and the kind of energy that told you immediately she was about to make herself everybody's problem. She let her purse hit the seat beside her like it was a challenge, sighed loud enough for half the cabin to hear, and then she started. The champagne wasn't bubbly enough. The blanket was cheap. The seat belt looked unsafe. Every word she said was aimed to cut down someone, anyone, just so she could feel taller. Now, I've met this type more times than I care to admit. People who walk into a room and think their presence is a gift. People who poke at others just to stir the pot. So I sat back, breathed slow, and figured if I let her rant long enough, she'd burn out. But she didn't. Her eyes landed on me. And that's when the real trouble began. She tilted her head, gave me that look, up and down like I was a wrong turn she'd just taken. And then she said, "Are you sure you're in the right seat? They make mistakes with upgrades sometimes." She smiled like she was being helpful, but her words carried the kind of venom you don't forget. I answered calm, steady, "Ticket matches the seat." I thought that'd be enough. But silence never satisfies people like her. She leaned back, loud enough for the row behind us. First class isn't what it used to be. These days, anyone can get in. She tapped her nails on the armrest, each click like she was daring me to flinch. Now, I'm not someone who rises to bait easy, but those words, they carried a weight I'd carried my whole life. People deciding who belongs and who doesn't. I considered letting it slide, but the cabin had shifted. People were staring, waiting. I finally said, calm as I could, "Comfort's for everyone who paid for it." My tone wasn't sharp, but it landed. She didn't like that. "Please," she scoffed. "People like you usually stick to the back of the plane." That one hung in the air like smoke. The couple across from us gasped. Even the engine seemed louder after that. I clenched my jaw, but didn't answer. Sometimes silence is stronger than a fight. But silence only made her angrier. She leaned in close, breath heavy with cheap perfume and wine, and sneered, "What? Nothing to say? You know I'm right." And then it happened. Quick, sharp, and loud enough to stop the whole cabin. She slapped me. Hard. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. A glass tipped over, champagne spilling across a tray, and everyone froze. I sat still for a heartbeat, the sting burning across my face. My pulse slowed, deliberate. She sat back in her seat, chest heaving, like she expected applause. Instead, the cabin sank into a silence, so heavy it felt like gravity doubled. Eyes were wide, hands covering mouths, everyone bracing for what came next. I turned my head, locked eyes with her, steady and cold. "You really shouldn't have done that," I said. My voice didn't rise, but the promise underneath it, that was enough. Her smirk wavered, but she forced it back like armor. I reached into my jacket, slow, deliberate. I could feel the whole cabin lean forward, holding their breath. She stared at my hand like it might pull out something terrible. And when it came out, it was just a plain black wallet. I flipped it open, and the golden badge caught the cabin lights. Federal Air Marshal. The ripple that went through first class was like a wave. Gasps, murmurs, even a few whispered, "Oh my goddess." Her face went pale, then flushed red. She laughed too loud, pointing at the badge. "That's fake. Anyone could buy one of those online." But the flight attendants leaned in, saw it up close, and their eyes told everyone the truth. I closed it, slid it back into my pocket, and said evenly, "You assaulted a federal officer on an aircraft." No threat, just fact. She cracked then, tears on command, clutching at her throat, gasping like she'd been in danger. "He threatened me, didn't you see?" He leaned at me like he had a weapon. I was defending myself. She raised her voice, hoping louder meant more believable. But the passengers around us shook their heads. One man raised his voice. She hit him out of nowhere. He never touched her. Another added, he was calm the whole time. She's been yelling since she sat down. The truth cut through her performance like glass. She doubled down, because people like her always do. Do you have any idea who I am? She snapped, chin high. I'll have your badge taken away. I leaned forward, eyes sharp enough to slice through her bluff. I don't need to treat you anyway. You treated yourself this way. My voice was low, final. The lead flight attendants started writing, noting everything, while passengers lifted their phones, recording it all. She noticed, shrieked at them to stop, swiped at a phone, but the attendants stepped in. Every second she fought, she only buried herself deeper. By the time we started our descent, her theatrics had run thin. She tried bargaining, whispering to the attendants about forgetting the whole thing if she made it worth their while. She flashed a credit card like it was a magic wand. The attendant shook her head firmly. Ma'am, bribery only makes this worse. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Do you know who I am? I turned my head calm, steady. Yes. You're the woman who slapped a federal officer in front of an entire cabin of witnesses. That broke the last thread she was clinging to. The passengers even chuckled, some shaking their heads. When we landed, you could feel the tension shift. The seatbelt sign went off, and the officers were already waiting at the gate. They boarded quick, uniforms dark, expressions carved from stone. The aisle cleared, cameras up, people ready to witness the end. She bolted upright, screaming, No, you can't. I'll sue. You don't know who you're dealing with. Her voice was frantic, desperate, but the officers didn't flinch. Ma'am, you're under arrest for assaulting a federal officer. Please stand. Her eyes darted everywhere, searching for sympathy, but all she saw were cold stares and phones pointed her way. She shook her head, muttered denials, begged, and then sobbed as they pulled her to her feet. She stumbled down the aisle, blouse wrinkled, hair falling out of its bun, dignity in pieces. The door closed behind her, and the cabin erupted. Applause, laughter, even cheers. Not because she was gone, but because the weight she'd dumped on all of us had finally lifted. A man leaned across the aisle, shook my hand, and said, Thank you for handling it the way you did. I nodded. Some lessons teach themselves. As I stepped off the plane, I knew the recordings were already making their way online, ready to be chewed up by the internet. But honestly, it didn't matter. The truth was plain as day. She destroyed herself. All I did was let the world see it. And here's the part that sticks with me. Justice doesn't always roar in with sirens and fists. Sometimes it comes quietly in the form of patience, composure, and a badge shown at just the right moment. So let me ask you this. If you'd been in that cabin, would you have stayed silent like most of the passengers, or would you have spoken up sooner? Do you think she got what she deserved, or was it too much? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'd really love to hear how you see it. And if you've ever had your own 30,000 feet of karma moment, share it. You'd be surprised how many of us have.